Doggo, please forgive me. Alright guys, so I know I said that I wasn't going to be doing the audiobooks anymore. I'm not going to go into the reasons why because I did make another video on it. You can go watch that if you want to know why. I'm not going to be doing those anymore, but what I did say I was going to be doing is I was going to be doing something very similar to what Doggo is doing. As soon as I read a story, I'll be making a video giving my thoughts, my theories, giving a super detailed description of the story and just kind of what happens in the story. And I'm going to fulfill that promise starting today with the first story of Blackbird. So, first, I think I'm just gonna, tell you what happens in the story, as Dako does. Please forgive me, Dako. And then I'm gonna give my thoughts on how this connects to the rest of the series, how it connects to maybe the main lore, and what theories I kind of have about it. So, the first story of the new book, Blackbird, it feels very similar to Dance With Me. It's actually a very similar concept, a very similar story, and also kind of similar to 1:35 a.m. I think out of all three stories, this is probably tied with 1:35 a.m. I think they're about as good as each other. It's a very interesting story. So it's about these two guys, Noel and Sam, right? And they're working on a film project for their school. They're in film school, and so they're making a movie. I guess that's what happens when my brother invites friends over. Don't worry, no one is dying. No one is dying. Please don't say I'm... Please don't... No one is dying. It's all fine here. Don't worry about that. Okay, where was I? Noel and Sam, yes, they're working on a film project. They're in film school, and they're thinking of making a horror movie of sorts. They try and decide, what character to base it off of. And Noel very much wants there to be blood, which, trust me, there will be. There will be. So Noel wants there to be blood, and Sam is just trying to come up with an interesting character. They don't really want a generic character to go off of, they want something new. And so they kind of... These people both know of Fazbear Entertainment, kind of showing, how far Fazbear Entertainment has spread in this world. It's not really a very niche thing. In some stories it seems like not many people know about it, but in this one at least there's a lot of people who know about the company and kind of what they've done. And they were always... And again, all these characters are scared of the animatronics there. It doesn't seem like anyone except, like, really young kids actually likes the characters. And so these guys decided, okay, they want something creepy like that, and they want... They also kind of base it off of The Raven from Edgar Allan Poe. I haven't read any of his stuff, but I've heard it's good, so... but they want something a bit more unique, so they go with a blackbird instead. It's not really a raven, it's not really a crow, those are all stereotypical things. They go with a blackbird. So immediately we get some really good looks at these characters. Noel kind of... So the thing about the blackbird, right, is it reveals your darkest secret, and then it kind of haunts you because of that. You can kind of see where this is going. This is going to happen to one of our main two characters. And so while Sam is making the costume they're going to wear to be the blackbird, which I thought was interesting because I thought it would be like a, an actual blackbird-sized thing, but it ends up being a costume. And so Sam makes their costume. Meanwhile, Noel actually confesses his dark secret because, they're talking to each other. They're like, hey, what's your biggest secret? And Noel, he confesses that he used to bully someone named Christine in school, and that, he would throw burrs at her. He put a mole in her locker once. Really weird and awful stuff. And yet he mentions, because the story's being told from his perspective, he mentions he still kind of feels proud of it. And so Sam, he's mad at this because he also got bullied because of his unusually long legs, which is also another thing they kind of based the blackbird on, or at least Sam did. It's where he came up with the idea. People, he sees himself, he thinks he looks like a bird. Weird stuff, and so he's mad at Noel because Noel is still kind of proud he was bullying this person, and Sam himself has been bullied before, and they get into a fight, and eventually they just they separate for now, and they both kind of go and work on things separately until they can kind of cool off. And so what really interesting thing that happens, Noel's new girlfriend Amber, she lets him know soon after that Sam seems to have been hit by a train. I know, and this hits you like a train when you're reading the story. Like, oh, okay, Sam is dead now, cool. Yeah. So Noel goes down to the scene where it happened. He sees blood on the tracks. which, there has to be blood, remember? He sees blood in the tracks, he sees feathers in the air. It looks like, it reminds him of their story, and that really creeps him out. And so now he has this idea in his head of, this bird is haunting him, like it was going to haunt the guy in their story. Again, like in 1:35 a.m., he starts experiencing nightmares and stuff, and having visions of some sort, very similar to Delilah in 1:35 a.m., and it's hard to tell whether it's real or in his head, again, like 1:35 a.m. And it's never confirmed that Sam is dead, by the way, because they never find his body, but he just completely disappears, so we kind of, we can kind of assume he's dead. And now the Blackbird seems to be haunting Noel. So this kind of makes him grow kind of insane, kind of paranoid, and eventually he tries to, ask for forgiveness for being such a bully. He says, "Sam, I'm sorry." He says over and over again. In the middle of the night, a policeman comes up to him and he says, "Hey, what's wrong? Are you..." He thinks he's doing drugs, because, this is really a weird situation for Noel to be in. Screaming into the air saying, "I'm sorry." And... Noel tells him kind of vaguely what's going on. "No, I feel really guilty because I did something I shouldn't have." And the policeman kind of gives him some advice. He says, "You should apologize to the actual person you probably hurt in the first place, which would be Christine, the person you bullied in junior high." And so Noel, he understands what the man is saying. He agrees with the policeman. And he says, "Thanks for your help. I'm going to go and I'm going to make things right, starting with Christine and then going back to Sam." Because originally he was trying to apologize to Sam, who, he's dead, that's not going to work very well, and the Blackbird was still haunting him. Now he's deciding he's going to go apologize to Christine. So, at first he goes to their parents' diner. You remember their parents own a diner? He goes to their diner, he asks their parents, "Hey, where's Christine?" And at first they think that he's, like, in love with her or something. But then, he tells them what's really going on, and they actually are really cool about it. I mean, not cool as in, like, "Oh, you bullied my daughter," whatever, it's fine. But cool as in, like, they know he's trying to apologize, and they tell him, she's that way, and he goes. So she's in college like him. She's, I believe, doing dance. She's studying dance, I believe. He goes there. He apologizes to her. It's a really awesome scene. Really, and kind of like I predicted, for whatever reason, she was overweight before, and now she's skinny. I'm not really sure why they added that, I guess to show, it's like the meme, "Oh, be careful who you make fun of in high school." Yeah, it's that. And so now she's like, now she's hot, and she forgives him, and it's all cool. And you kind of think, okay, things are going to work out in the end now, and they do. They do. I was kind of wondering if things were going to take another dark turn, but no, it has a really happy ending, which is uncommon for this series. He finds Sam. There's no, like, ultimate fight with the Blackbird. No, the Blackbird doesn't show up after that at all. He finds Sam. Somehow Sam was alive. Apparently he passed out and was hidden below the train tracks, kind of in this ditch sort of thing, from what I made of it. He was hidden there behind some plants or whatever. It's a bit hard to believe, but I mean, whatever. And so Noel apologizes to him. Sam's like, "Oh, whatever, dude, I made too much of it anyway." And they're like, they're buddies now. It's great. One weird thing which I thought was kind of unnecessary is that then Sam reveals he's a bully too. Just for whatever reason. He says that he would get revenge on people who wronged him, which, again, very similar to the Blackbird. That's just kind of thrown out there in the final few pages. It's weird. But yeah, that's the story of Blackbird. And honestly, it's pretty good. It's alright. It's not my favorite. It's not a bad story. It's good. Yeah, not much lore here. I mean, the first stories in these books are usually pretty, not lore-filled. There's not much lore, but, it is a very interesting story, especially how it connects to Dance With Me so much. Again, in Dance With Me, which is my least favorite story, by the way. This one does it much better, I think. The whole thing was, okay, Ballora is stalking Casey because she's doing something wrong. The thing is, Ballora just never really posed much of a threat. She was never really that scary, and yet you could tell that they were trying to make her scary. It didn't work. But this story, it does it much better. I would have liked... I feel like it could have done a bit better. Maybe show the Blackbird itself a bit more. It was very similar to 1:35 a.m., It was very similar to 1:35 a.m., where you never actually really saw Ella after kind of the initial setup of her character. You just kind of, maybe you heard a rustle behind you, or maybe you saw, a little glimpse of a dress. But you never actually saw Ella after she was first introduced, and the same is here with the Blackbird. Noel never actually fully really sees the Blackbird, from what I remember. He just kind of caught glimpses of feathers, maybe he heard a noise, very similar to those two stories kind of combined. And so because of that, there is kind of the possibility that Noel was imagining it, but after the story kind of concludes, he doesn't seem like mentally unstable or anything. It doesn't seem like he could have imagined it very easily, unless there was something playing tricks on his mind. Because most of this stuff he experiences is a nightmare. So I think, I'm not sure if there was actually, I feel like there was something paranormal going on in the story because these books are about paranormal events. But again, as with 1:35 a.m., it kind of feels like someone could definitely imagine this. Especially after the supposed death of a friend, it could happen. People have compared this story with Ultimate Custom Night and how, like in that story, or game, William is being tormented, he's made to pay for his crimes. This is kind of, it has the vaguely similar themes, but it doesn't really reveal anything new about that. Again, as I mentioned before, this kind of implies that a lot of people know about Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Up until now, I kind of got the impression that it was just like a really underground kind of cult following. Like a few people know about it, but most things were just covered up. Because in other stories, like Fetch, one of the characters, I forget which one, I think it was, Cyril? I don't know. The one with the C. He said that he did some digging online and he was able to find, like, this thread of people who, like, talk about unsolved mysteries, and there was a reference to Freddy's there, and it was, like, this really unknown thing. But yet here, these two guys who just became friends in film school somehow both know about Freddy's. Maybe there was one in their town. No one is dying, I promise. Maybe it was in their town, it was really popular, and then it closed down, and so that's how they both know about it, but I don't know, it seems weird to me how, this series keeps switching from, okay, no one knows about it, everyone knows about it. No one knows about it, everyone knows about it. It's not important, but it's an interesting little detail and kind of inconsistency. Yeah, remember to leave your own theories in the comments, by the way. I don't care if they're good or bad, I like reading them. I can't come up with much. This story, as with the first stories in most of these books, doesn't have much lore. It's a fun story. I do think it could have done a bit better. I think just seeing little glimpses of the Blackbird was nice. It was kind of, it was creepy, but I think having, like, one time where the Blackbird is actually chasing him, having a cool chase sequence, I think would have raised the story a bit better. I don't know, just in my opinion. Again, leave your theories. That's really all I have to talk about for this story. Next time we'll be covering something much more interesting. I've already started reading it. It's called, The Real Jake, which, if you remember, Jake is one of the kids in the Stitchwraith, and as I've started reading it, it does have some very similar parallels to this second Stitchwraith story in Fetch, which featured, well, maybe I'll get to that next time because, I don't know, maybe you guys don't want spoilers. I'll leave it for now, but I'll get to it soon. Definitely going to be a much more interesting story, I think, although I don't think it'll be as scary. I read some non-spoiler reviews, and apparently it's, like, really sad, though. But it's really weird so far. It's really strange. I'll get to it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye. Guys, I got contacts! Do I look better like this? Or like this? Okay, I think it's about time we talk about Blackbird again. So we covered the first story. This is where it gets interesting, okay? This is where it gets really, really interesting. By the way, for real, actually, like, let me know which you prefer here. I'll do it again. No, I don't want to do it again. Looks weird. Ugh. Can't believe I wore those things. Anyway, the second story of Blackbird is The Real Jake. Now, if you've been following along very closely, you know that there is already a character named Jake in this universe. Actually, potentially two, because of course Scott reused a name. I mean, there's like thousands of names, probably more than that. but he can't help but use the same names like 300 times. I don't know what to tell you. However, this Jake is probably different than the one than one of the ones we've seen before. Well, see, the first time we heard the name Jake was in Fetch because Greg, the main character, was babysitting this kid named Jake. That could be the same kid, or it could be a big coincidence. I'm not sure how. I'm not sure. We don't have enough evidence to really make a solid confirmation there. But it could be the same kid. And the second time we see a kid named Jake is in the Stitchwraith epilogues, where we meet this kid named Jake, who's inside of the Stitchwraith, by the way. You know, this big creepy thing that we've been terrified of this whole time. Yeah, there's just a kid in there, and he's actually, you know, trying to do a good deed, trying to collect all these agony-infused objects and get rid of them all, so people stop, you know, dying from them. He's doing that. He's a good kid. Along with this other kid in the Stitchwraith named Andrew, who we've also seen in a story that seemed to be kind of dedicated to him and the man in room 1280. In this story, The Real Jake, we cover him, and we get his backstory. Now, this isn't the only this isn't the only thing in this story that we've seen before. This entire story has been told to us before, in, you know, a little bit less detail, in the Stitchwraith story too. I'm not going to go over what happens in there because it's, you know, it's basically just rehashing what I'm going to say here, and it does kind of offer some spoilers for this story. But let me just say this, pay very close attention to some of the details in this story, and also the physical descriptions of the Stitchwraith. And you'll notice some very interesting parallels. So let's get into the story. So Jake is this very sick kid. He has a tumor. I forget what the scientific name for the tumor he has. It's something weird, but he calls it his pine nut because the scientific name sounds like pine nut, I believe. And so he calls it that. He's very unhealthy, and he's being in the care of someone named Margie. And she's trying to take care of him. She's trying to, you know, convince herself that he's going to be okay, but she knows that, you know, he's probably not going to be okay. He's very sick, and any day now he could die. And it's very, yeah, in case you haven't kind of gotten the idea, this is a very sad story. From the beginning, you know, they're telling you, okay, he's probably not going to make it, but that doesn't make, you know, what happens in this story any less sad. I'd say it's probably the saddest so far. Maybe not coming home. A lot of people seem to really think coming home was sad. I never really thought of it that way very much. I don't know, but we'll see. Let's continue with the story. So Jake is under the care of a woman named Margie, who his dad, Evan, hired because his dad is working overseas. He is a soldier, he's in the military. And so he can't be with Jake enough to take care of him, and so he hired Margie to do it for him. Originally it was just kind of, you know, so she can make some cash, but now she's gotten really attached to Jake, and she's, you know, terrified of what could happen to him. Yeah, so Jake spends most of his days in bed, so you think, okay, this is going to be a pretty boring story. Yeah, the only times he isn't in bed is when he goes to the hospital, and the nurses, you know, they check him out, they give him a little checkup, see how he's doing. Otherwise, he's just at home in bed. There's only one paranormal thing that happens, really, in this story. Okay, I guess kind of two. One that seems paranormal, and the other that it definitely is. But first, I do need to talk about, so Margie's kind of plan. So Margie, she hopes that he makes it, and she wants him to make it. And so she thinks that if he has enough good memories, if he has enough care and love in his life, he could potentially make it through this illness. Not really based in science at all, but she's hoping that, you know, she can help him by keeping him happy. Because, you know, being just lying in your bed all day, it's not going to be very healthy, and it's probably not going to help you out very much. So she tries to help this kid out, and she's such a great character. And Jake is too, all the characters in this story. So this is where the paranormal part of things begins. See, every night when Jake goes to sleep, and Margie closes the door, she leaves the room, someone talks to Jake. Someone from inside the cabinet in his room. Margie doesn't seem to know about this, and Jake doesn't seem to question it. He doesn't know who's in the cabinet, all he knows is that the name of this person is Simon, and he's a little boy like Jake. And he says that he can't come out of the cabinet, but Jake will be able to see him when he's better. When he's better, he can get up out of bed, and he can go see Simon. That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. So through the whole story, right, we're wondering who Simon is. Now, Simon, at first I was very suspicious of him, right? Because who is this guy? He talks to Jake, every night, and he asks him, okay, what did you do today? Jake will usually tell him, oh, I was in bed like normal. But then Simon asks, no, what did the real Jake do today? The real Jake, obviously the name of the story, is also what Simon, what he means when he says this is, what would Jake have done if he was a normal kid? What would Jake want to do today? And so they come up with this whole other life for Jake to help him get through this one. Still I wasn't very trusting of Simon. I figured he's probably going to be evil in the end. Pretending to be Jake's friend like Eleanor was to Sarah in the second story of Fazbear Frights. What I think is interesting is this happens every single night, and I couldn't explain what was going on here yet. But every night they come, they ask, Simon asks Jake, okay, what did the real Jake do today? And Jake will come up with things like, say, oh, I was playing with the neighbor's kids, or I went to see a movie, or we watched a baseball game, me and my dad. So he imagines this life where everything is okay, where he's not sick, where his dad is not overseas, where he's with Jake. And this is kind of the life that he imagines, and the life that Simon helps him imagine. And yet, at least for me, I still didn't really trust Simon. The interesting thing, and it doesn't happen in any specific special reveal, but it just kind of happens. You switch to Margie's perspective of the story, and she just kind of flat out reveals that she's the one behind Simon. Simon is not some sort of paranormal thing, as I hinted at earlier. He seems like it at first, to kind of keep you going, but he's actually a doll that Margie created. Just a normal, everyday doll. She bought a doll, and what she does is she takes Evan's voice, Jake's dad, and she puts a little recordy speaker device in the doll, by the doll, in the cabinet, and then every night, Evan will talk to Jake about what the real Jake did today, but not as Evan, but as Simon. So Margie found out how to do a voice filter and make Evan sound like a kid, like a little boy like Jake is. And then he talks to Jake. It may seem like a really roundabout way to just have Evan be talking to Jake, and Evan does talk to Jake as himself as well, but this is kind of a better way to help him cope, I think, so that Jake can still have a friend. He does have another friend who tries to help him sneak out once later in the story. Doesn't really go anywhere. Margie catches him and he goes back to his bed. Not sure what the point of that was. Maybe just to kind of add a few extra pages onto the story. But we'll get to that in a bit, I think. So Margie kind of reveals to the audience, not to Jake, that this is kind of what's going on. And Simon is just a doll that is in this cabinet, and when Jake is well enough to get better and come out and look in the cabinet and find out what Simon is, he finds this doll. And the fascinating and really interesting thing that happens here is Simon, she bought just a normal blank white doll, but every day when Jake comes up with these experiences that he would like to experience, she will draw on a little piece of that onto this little doll. Now, this is the part where things might start to sound familiar to you if you've been keeping up with kind of the overarching story here up until now. First of all, one time Jake said, oh, he was eating pizza and he got sauce all over his mouth. And so she drew on this doll, she took a red marker and she drew over the mouth. One other time, Jake fell over while he was playing sport, and one of his tooth fell out. That's what the real Jake did. One of his teeth fell out. And so she blacks out one of the teeth. The other time, he was watching a movie, and he got some popcorn stuck in his teeth. So she puts a little piece of popcorn stuck in the teeth. And sometimes she'll even use real objects. One time she attaches a smiley face eraser to this doll. I'm hoping most of you can see what's going on here. It took me embarrassingly long to find out what's going on here. But I feel like by the end of the story, even if you haven't caught on yet, you will. So at this point, every seemingly paranormal element of the story has just been gone. Now Simon is revealed to just be a normal little doll with a voice recorder next to him. The cabinet has nothing special. But if you've read the second Fazbear Frights Stitchwraith epilogue, you know this cabinet does have importance. Jake has importance. Margie has importance. And if you've been following along, this doll absolutely has importance. So what happens next is probably the saddest part, so brace yourself. Towards the end of the story, Margie gets a call from Michael. Michael is Jake's uncle, and he says that Evan has passed away. And he's left the house and everything there, Jake included, to Margie. Margie is devastated. She is just completely, she cannot handle it, which is understandable. And one of her friends, I forget her name, but one of her friends helps her through this. I believe her friend is also, if I remember correctly, the mother of the kid who tried to get Jake out of the house before Margie caught them. I'm not sure, I don't quite remember, but it's not important. Anyway, she helps Margie, but Margie is devastated, and she decides not to tell Jake about this just yet. And she keeps putting off telling Jake about that his dad is dead. She keeps putting it off. She doesn't want to tell him, but Jake does notice something is wrong with her. Something, that she's sad. He notices this, but he decides he doesn't really say anything just yet. So neither of them are talking about the situation. The main reason she doesn't seem to want to tell Jake about this is because, obviously, with Evan gone, Simon has no voice. Simon can't talk to Jake anymore, so she decides just to not tell him what happened, and just that Simon won't be visiting. He's confused that she actually knows about Simon, because he still doesn't know that she knows. But she says, no, he's not going to be visiting. I can't explain why I know about this. She doesn't tell him yet. Jake's condition seems to rapidly get worse. For no seeming reason. There might be a reason, I just haven't gone in deep enough into the story to find out what. Maybe he does kind of piece together what's going on, and it just leads him to just decline. Maybe the whole reason he's been alive up until now is because she's been, she and Evan have been helping him with these happy memories, and it has kept him alive like she thought it would. And now that he, knows something is wrong, maybe he does know Evan is dead, maybe he's pieced it together, now his condition just declines rapidly. And as they're about to take him to the hospital, Jake dies as well. And as they're wheeling him away, Margie is just devastated, but no one notices that the cabinet door is wide open, and Simon is gone. And that's the entire end of the story. Nothing happens after that. Nothing in this story, at least. Obviously, this is connected to the Stitchwraith stories, but nothing in this story happens after this. This is the end, and I'm left with a few questions. I'm wondering, maybe, because I'm not sure how Jake's soul was transferred to Simon, because obviously, if you haven't pieced it together yet, Simon is the Stitchwraith, the doll in the Stitchwraith. The smiley face eraser, the seemingly blood around the mouth, that's actually pizza sauce, blacked out eye, blacked out tooth, something stuck between their remaining tooth. It's the Stitchwraith doll. And it's gone. And the cabinet door is open. So there's two things going to happen. Jake opened the door, he found Simon, and he died for some reason. Or he died, he was in the doll, and the doll escaped. I don't think that's quite the case. I'm not sure how it's not, but I don't think it's the case, because Jake mentions in one of the other epilogues that he remembers being a little boy, and now he remembers he's in this metal thing. He doesn't mention remembering being in a doll. Now, that could just be to keep the surprise intact for this story, but he never mentions being in the doll. So I think he probably was, but it's a bit weird that he never mentions it. Overall, this story is it's good. Again, it's pretty slow, and it doesn't. I feel like a lot of it could probably have been cut out, but I do think it's a good story, and I've ever since first reading it, I've grown a lot more attached to it. All we know is somehow Jake went from point A to point B. He went from this doll to the Stitchwraith. Something happened. Maybe we'll get something that fills in the gaps. Maybe in this very epilogue of Fazbear Frights 6 that I haven't read yet. Not sure. Next time we will be going through the third story, Hide and Seek. I've heard mixed opinions about it. I do know one big spoiler about who the animatronic in this one is, and also kind of what happens to the character. We'll see what happens. I'm excited to actually read it. Honestly, by the time this video is out, I probably will have already read it, because these videos come out pretty a while after I actually read the story, so I can kind of gather my thoughts. Also, I guess I need to work on we're approaching 5,000 subscribers. I need to do something for that. Thank you guys so much, by the way. I need to do something for that before we hit the milestone. I think I'm like 10 subscribers away though, so I need to probably get on that. In case you can't tell, I'm excited. Thank you guys so much. And I feel like there should be more I have to say about this story, but honestly, I'm not sure. I think that's it. Thank you guys for watching, and next time we will be covering hide and seek, which seems to be an interesting one. Alright, bye-bye. Alright, okay, we're back. Blackbird! Alright, we are almost done this book. I think we're on, like, the final story, yes. Hide and Seek, which I just finished reading, as well as the teaser at the end, and oh boy, is it weird. And yet, I think this teaser is probably my favorite so far. I mean, to be honest, like, it's just really good. I mean, it's weird, and it's, at this point, it's really starting to feel like more sci-fi than even, like, Sister Location and the other stuff that we've gotten that's been, like, really sci-fi. This is starting to feel even more so, like that. But before we get to that, you know, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's get to Hide and Seek. I just kind of wanted to mention that this epilogue is really good, and I can't wait to see where it goes. But okay, enough of that. Hide and Seek. The final story in Blackbird, and I'll be real, it's not my favorite. I do tend to kind of point out the problems I have with stories more than the good things I like about them. I tend to be a bit pessimistic when I'm talking about stories like that, and so I realize that in my past videos, maybe it sounds like I don't like any of these stories, because I do try and make an effort to point out the things that I think could be done better. As you know what, I think it could be improved. And so maybe when I say I don't like a story as much, it doesn't sound that meaningful. But this one, I just, I liked the other ones. I liked Blackbird. I liked The Real Jake. I had my own tiny problems with them, which I'm sure I pointed out, but I liked those stories. And this one has its good moments too. It's just not one that I like as much. But before I kind of get to a more detailed review, let's actually go through the story and what it means. But first,
only a small percentage of my viewers are actually subscribed. If you want to see more, consider subscribing.
It's free and you can always unsubscribe later. So it follows this kid named Toby, and Toby actually works at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. This seems to be a very arcade-focused version of Freddy's. They've had arcades in the past, but this one, that at least is all Toby cares about, at least. Because his brother used to work here as well. Oh, what was his brother's name? Hold up. Connor, that's it, Connor. Yeah, so Toby, when his brother worked there, Connor, he basically got the high score in every single game at this place. All the games they have, he beat the high score, and Toby has sort of developed this complex of just, like, really, really wanting to beat him, because Connor loves to rub it in. He's awful, and so Toby wants to beat him. Toby wants to beat him at something, and so his whole goal at first in this story is just to beat him at a video game. Simple enough, right? And at this pizzeria, they have gotten a new game recently called Hide and Seek. That took way too long. Yeah, the new game they got is called Hide and Seek. And the whole premise of this game, as Toby finds out when he goes into this game, he basically kind of rage quits on all the other ones, the fighting game that he was playing at the start of the story, which he got really close to beating his brother's score, and then he doesn't. So he moves on to the new game they have called Hide and Seek. His brother hasn't even played this one yet, and Connor doesn't even know that this is here. So Toby thinks he can beat this game, get the high score, and do so before Connor ever even knows the game is out. So the whole premise of the game is a little black version of Bonnie, Shadow Bonnie, although his name is never like explicitly said in the game. He's a shadow and he has rabbit ears. That's all they say about him. But it's Shadow Bonnie. He's hiding in this kind of. It's weird how the description is because it's kind of hard to tell what they're trying to say. One of the problems I have with this story is it's not really descriptive enough in some parts that would be really helpful. But it seems like there's these cardboard cutouts of different places in this kind of almost entire room is dedicated to this game. And there's little props and stuff where Bonnie can hide behind. And so you have a 3-minute timer, and Bonnie will hide behind 3 places, 3 little props. They seem to be really cheap, like cardboard cutouts almost, hanging on little posts on the wall. And the whole thing is you have to find where he's hidden before the 3 minutes run out. Really simple. Toby tries to beat this game. He even takes a break so he can cool off and kind of gather himself before he tries again. But when he goes back to the game and he tries it again, he gets upset. And he literally just tears apart the whole thing. He rips all the props off the walls and stuff. He just trashes the entire place. And then, well, obviously there's going to be consequences for that. And so, he blacks out. Yeah, he never actually seems to get caught. He blacks out. Right after destroying the entire thing and realizing what he did, he blacks out. And he wakes up in a room. He's in a cold metal table which he's tied onto with a rope around his wrists, and he has no idea where he is. He just wakes up here. Then he feels what he thinks is a needle in his back pricking him, not like a medical needle, but a sewing needle. It feels like someone's sewing into him, maybe I don't know. It's never explained what's going on here. We have some theories, but I'm not quite. I'll get to that. Right now, we're just doing the description. It isn't explained in the story, at least. And then he blacks out again and wakes up back home in his bed, and he doesn't question the whole experience at first. He does notice that there is seemingly a really dark shadow, kind of like that one, but it's darker, and it has rabbit ears on top, and so. He notices this, but he just woke up, and so he thinks, oh, it must have all just been a bad dream, right? This is some weird dream, and so he goes back to sleep, wakes up again, and the shadow is still there, and immediately he starts to get concerned. It isn't like in some other stories and stuff, where it takes the protagonist, super long to actually figure out, hey, something's a bit off here. No, right away, he knows, okay, something's going on here. One interesting thing to note is when we meet Toby's dad. Some people have pointed out there might be some similarities here between this family and the Afton family. I'm not entirely sure. The mom apparently left. We don't know why. It's hinted at a couple times, but they never actually explain it. And the dad is described to have bloodshot eyes and to just, when he comes home, watch sports. So, not much to go on there. But the story does make a point of showing you that Toby doesn't really fit in with the rest of his family. Connor and his dad have things they can bond over, like the sports, but Toby isn't really interested in that, and so he feels kind of left out, which kind of plays an important role in the story later. So Toby goes back to work, and he sees just the huge mess he made. He's still concerned about the shadow, but when he sees the mess, he's more concerned about that, obviously. His boss shows up, and he's asking him if he knows what's going on, and he says, he's going to get the police involved, and now Toby is feeling guilty and very, very nervous that he's going to be found out. But still, he doesn't, deny, or he denies knowing anything. He plays dumb, and, he's a lot more nervous now of what could happen. And so Toby tries, once again, to get this shadow off of him, and it seems like the shadow could be, trying to symbolize his guilt for destroying the thing. Not sure. But he tries to get it off of him in all kinds of different ways. He tries to literally scrub it off of his back at one point. So, he's trying all kinds of things, trying to get it off in many different ways. And it's not working. He blacks out again for some reason, and then he wakes up and he has to go to school. There's a few parts of the story that don't seem like they really matter in the long run. They just kind of happen, like him constantly blacking out. It happens, well, not constantly, it happens like twice. The first time where he wakes up in the room where there's the needle, and the second time here he blacks out and then he wakes up and it's time for school. It seems like they just kind of wanted to quickly have a little bit of a time skip there without actually filling it in with anything. I don't know, that seems to be what the intention that was there from the authors. But he goes to school now, and he's getting more paranoid, and he's starting to look a little bit sickly even as well. His skin is pale, he's got bags under his eyes, and the shadow is getting bigger, and it's getting darker. And so, he goes to school, and he really does not feel like doing anything. So in phys ed class, he quickly, he sneaks out because he doesn't want to do this, and he comes up with a plan. He's going to go to the school pool. I don't know why the school has a pool. None of my schools have had a pool. Is that not normal? Is that a normal thing that schools have a pool? Can you guys let me know? Like, I did not know that was a thing. Is that a thing that happens? Do schools just have pools now? I wasn't aware. But he decides he's going to try and drown the shadow. And this is just, it's such a dumb thing for him to do. He ties a weight to himself. He puts on this, like, weighted vest thing, if I remember correctly, and he straps it on, and he goes into the pool, sinks to the bottom, waits until he can't hold his breath any longer, then he tries to undo the jacket, or the little thing, suit thing, and oh, looks like the little clip isn't working, he can't undo it. The weighted vest is still stuck on him, and he can't get it off. Who could have seen this coming? And so he's sitting there, unable to swim to the surface, drowning, until this girl from his class decides to show up and help him, at, the convenient right time. The girl who saves him's name is Tabitha. She doesn't play a huge role in the story, but she's probably one of the more important characters next to Toby himself. She thinks he was trying to hurt himself, which is understandable given how that must have looked. And no, the shadow obviously didn't disappear. It's still there. But for some reason, he feels like he can probably tell her about the shadow. There's one other guy who did see the shadow. No one else has seen it except for, I believe it's one of his coworkers, Reggie. For some reason, come up with your theories on that, I guess. There's some weird other co-employee who recognized the shadow, and his name is Reggie, and no one else can see it. I don't know if that's important in the slightest, but he tells Tabitha about it, and she believes him. Good, I guess. So anyway, Tabitha tells Toby that she might be able to help him. She's going to try and hook him up with a counselor, for some reason. I guess she still doesn't really believe him. And she tries to come up with some other things, but in the end, they go their separate ways for now, if I could speak. And a couple other things that happen that really just ramp up Toby's guilt. For one, a police officer comes to the door and, asks him a few questions because he thinks, okay, this kid might have been the one to do it. Which obviously he's right, but he leaves even though Toby says it seems like the police officer had his suspicions. He leaves and Toby's fine, but the guilt is really setting in now and the shadow's getting bigger. Again, maybe a parallel to his guilt. Then he asks his dad, who's watching sports again because that's his only personality trait. He asks him why their mom left. No answer. And then Toby goes back to work, sees the game trying to be repaired. There's some IT guy there trying to repair it, who says it's still apparently in the middle of the last game that was played. And it says the last game that was played was by some guy named Toby. At least that's what the IT guy says, because he obviously doesn't know Toby's name. And so you'd think that maybe the owner of this place would check who played it last, and then maybe that would be a pretty good hint as to who broke the game, I don't know. But apparently he didn't really have his suspicions of Toby, even though Toby was literally the last guy to play. I don't know. But anyway, it says the game is still in the middle of it, and the game hasn't been completed. And Toby, after thinking this over for a bit, he realizes, okay, so I still have to beat the game, and then maybe this shadow will go away? And so that's what he tries to do. So then there's a little bit of a cool dream sequence, which feels a bit disconnected from the rest of the story, but there's a lot of things in this story that feel kind of disconnected. But it is a cool dream sequence of Toby in a police station for some reason, hiding from Shadow Bonnie. It's a pretty cool sequence. The police station might be a reference to that game, because the game he played, Hide and Seek, had a police station prop in it. But I don't know, it doesn't really mean anything in the end. The next scene, though, is where you really kind of start to notice that the dialogue in this story is just kind of bad. It doesn't feel like real people talking. At least like in the later scenes. The earlier bits are kind of better, and this is kind of a problem with a fair amount of Fazbear Frights stories, but in this one especially, it's just the dialogue feels very robotic, very wooden. But basically, this is like more towards the end, and what happens is Toby is talking to Connor again. Connor notices that Toby's just looking really sickly at this point, and so Toby is just completely ignoring this because he doesn't want to tell Connor about it. He knows he'll think he's crazy. So all he says is, okay, I'm going to go beat this game, Connor. I'm going to beat this game. I'm going to have one over you. I'm going to have beaten you at something for once. And Connor just really doesn't care. And at this point, it's a bit confusing because Connor does act like he does care, but at the same time he says he doesn't. He talks about how Toby has just kind of let this whole rivalry really go to his head, and it's all Toby thinks about now. And Toby realizes nothing. Toby doesn't think he's right. Toby doesn't admit that he's kind of obsessing over this whole sibling rivalry they have going on. He still wants to beat the game, and he doesn't care if Connor doesn't care anymore. Connor's just completely left at this point. He doesn't care anymore. He's realized kind of how pathetic this whole thing is, but Toby decides to go back. He decides to beat the game because it's all he cares about, and it is the weirdest thing. He's about to start the game. He's about to play it again and try and beat it. When he decides to commit suicide, he literally tries to kill himself, and he does. On one of the pegs where the props hung, he impales himself on it. And that's the end of the story. Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking with that ending. Regardless, that's hide and seek. The ending really takes away from the story. The dialogue takes away from the story. But other than that, I think it's decent. I think it has some really good moments, and I think it has a really neat concept as well. There's just a little bit of that execution that doesn't go the smoothest way possible. Theory-wise, I'm not sure if there's much here. Again, there's the parallels of Shadow Bonnie being maybe connected to guilt. There was, at that one scene where Toby gets the needle in his back, it's not really explained. It could be, I could see it being an experiment, possibly, that William could do on someone, but I'm not sure if even William could make a shadow appear behind someone and grow and have like a specific shape. That just doesn't seem like something he could do, even, with how sci-fi this series has been getting. Shadow Bonnie himself, I was hoping we'd maybe get a confirmation for his origin story. That hasn't happened. I still have my theory, which I made in a different theory video I did on the channel. But other than that, I mean, there's not much here theory-wise, which is fine. Like, I don't really usually look in these stories for theories very much. If they're here, that's great. But overall, it's not really... it doesn't bother me if there isn't any. I think it's important not to always get bogged down with the lore and to have some stories in here that are just fun and interesting. The Real Jake, which came right before this, was packed with lore. So I think this one not having much is perfectly fine. Even if maybe I would have preferred getting some sort of hint as to what Shadow Bonnie is. Instead, he's just a character in a video game, which doesn't tell us much, but it doesn't really have to, Regardless, thank you guys for watching. That's all for today. It's actually crazy because the next book, The Cliffs, is coming out in like a little bit over a month, because I've been taking forever to get these videos out and just to read the book in general. With people ordering tons of stuff from Amazon these days for obvious reasons, it took me a while to get my copy. Yeah, now like a month to go until The Cliffs, which I'm excited for. There is a preview out right now, which I read, and it starts off pretty nice, but it gets dark real fast, even just in the preview. So it seems like it could be pretty fast-paced, and I'm excited for that. I think a couple fast-paced stories are what this series needs, because a lot of these are pretty slow. So I wouldn't mind having something that progresses a bit quicker. I don't know. That's just the way it seems to be going from the preview I read. The previews seem to be pretty long for these books. They can be up to like half of the story, the first story anyway, which is not bad. But yeah, okay. That's all. Thank you guys for watching. I still don't have an outro. I still have know way to end these videos. If you have an outro idea for me, please give it to me, because I still have none. Okay, bye. Alright, it's time to talk about Blackbird for the last time. Today, we've gone through all the stories, okay? All the main stories, that is. We still have yet to cover the epilogue. These mysterious black pages at the end of the book that they always have something good in store. And let me tell you, I read it, and yeah, this is a weird one, but I really like it. I mentioned this in my hide-and-seek video. I mentioned how excited I was to get to this, so let's talk about it. But first...
Only a small percentage of my viewers are actually subscribed. If you want to see more, consider subscribing.
It's free and you can always unsubscribe later. Quick summary, so basically this one pretty much only follows Larson again, Detective Larson, who's investigating the Stitchwraith. He's found the old factory where Jake and Andrew inside of the Stitchwraith are collecting all these various animatronics from all of these stories together for some mysterious purpose. And he gets here as they're putting the, they're putting the final pieces on the pile, including the Foxy plush that is in Lonely Freddy. Remember the 5th story in the entire series? Yeah. So we know that that's connected to this now. I kind of assume every story is connected, but like now we have confirmation for that one. So whatever that means. The weird thing is Larson mentions he can hear someone whispering inside the factory. The Stitchwraith has never talked before. Jake and Andrew inside of it have been talking, but apparently other people can hear them talking as well, which is interesting. Either that or it's someone completely different whispering. If that's the case, I have no idea who it could be. So Larson finds the Stitchwraith inside of this factory, right as they dump the Foxy plush into this big old pile of stuff. And the Stitchwraith sees Larson, he raises his gun, he's scared, and Jake tries to convince Andrew not to attack Detective Larson. So Andrew wants to stop him so that they can actually get on with their business. In other words, he wants to kill him. Jake is trying to stop him, and the animatronic to Larson just looks like it's doing this spastic dance, just like shaking and convulsing. And so he's terrified out of his mind, but eventually Jake manages to get control, and he presses the start button on the trash compactor that all these little items are in. So the compactor starts, and the Stitchwraith throws itself into the compactor. I'm assuming Jake does this. And we don't know why yet, but we will in a second. So now all the junk is just being, like, turned over and crushed inside of this compactor, including the Stitchwraith and including Jake and Andrew. And they kind of don't want this. They kind of want to get out of here, actually, now. So Jake tries to grab Andrew's hand. And the weird thing is here, obviously these guys aren't alive, and obviously they don't have real bodies, but they talk about it as if they... Jake says he tries to grab Andrew's hand, even though they don't really have hands, so it seems to be kind of almost a metaphor? I'm not quite sure. Now, as Jake is trying to pull Andrew out of the way, he looks down and he sees where below Andrew there is this mix of muddy brown, yellows, reds. I'm not sure what that means, but it seems to be just the trash kind of being crushed together under them. So Jake is trying to pull Andrew out of here, but he realizes something else is with them, keeping him from getting Andrew out of this place. And as Jake is trying to pull him, he says towards the happy memory that Jake has. In the last book, he caught a glimpse of this memory with his dad where they were in a baseball field watching a game. He's trying to pull Andrew towards that. It's all very cryptic. But then Jake realizes that the reason it isn't working is because someone else is there with them, trying to pull Andrew back down. And as this is happening, Detective Larson sees light start to shine from the junk in the compactor. Yeah, this is weird, something's happening. And the person who's trying to stop them, this hitchhiker we've been hearing about since Stitchwraith 3, where they realize someone else is probably in here with them, is the man, the crispy sausage in a hospital bed who we saw in The Man in Room 1280. And he's here with them, and he's trying to pull Andrew back down because, as we know, Andrew and this man have some sort of beef. Presumably, this man killed him. Now Andrew's trying to get his revenge, but now as he's trying to escape, the man is pulling him back down. And so yeah, the man comes out of this junk, and he's right below them. He's trying to pull Andrew down with him. And two rabbit ears start to twist themselves out of his flesh, out of his head and over top of his head. You know, kind of proving, yeah, okay, this is William, all right. This next part is a bit weird. I think the only real way to explain it is just a quote from it, because it's hard to explain. Just listen. Jake felt the creature claw at him. It felt like he was being mauled and pummeled by a force filled with a never-ending need to inflict pain. But he didn't give in to it. Throwing everything he had into his effort and drawing on the power of his memory, Jake turned himself into a massive bat of intention, and he swung away, knocking Andrew loose from the evil that held him. Andrew, suddenly free, was sucked away, and he vanished. Jake, however, couldn't untangle himself from the relentless rabbit creature. He fell back into the seething junk and was engulfed in blackness. Whatever that means. I guess Jake has been caught now and Andrew's free. And then the junk just stops glowing, stops moving, the compactor stops, and everything just stops. And Larson is dumbfounded. He has no idea what's going on, so he decides, okay, I'm just gonna go back to my vehicle and make a log of this. So this is what he records. The Stitchwraith appears to be dead, he said into the recorder. He felt like an idiot. Dead wasn't the right word for what he just witnessed, was it? And what exactly did he see? I saw an animatronic endoskeleton with a doll's head and some kind of battery, wearing a hooded trench coat, putting stuff in a trash compactor and pulverizing it. It also destroyed itself. I think the stuff in the compactor came from the Fazbear Entertainment Distribution Center, and also from the site where the serial killer, William Afton, the one notorious for wearing a rabbit costume, died. We're not quite sure where he died. There was mention of a fire before in one of the previous books, but we don't know where that was, what happened there, or even how it ended or started. We know nothing about it. And it seems like Larson is coming really close to actually figuring out everything going on here. I mean, he's pretty close to the truth. He's figuring out about the kids, he's figuring out the hauntings, he's figuring out a ton of stuff. It's actually, it's kind of impressive. Good job, Larson. Now this is the coolest part. Okay, this is where things start to get really, really sci-fi and really, really cool. So, the trash starts to move, right? The trash starts to move. It starts to come up out of the compactor and form a shape. It seems to be the shape of a man. Interesting. And all these different parts of different animatronics and toys are coming together to form this huge creation. It says arms become legs, and legs become arms. Shins are used for the neck of the thing. And all of this comes together to form this man shape, and then 2 bunny ears, again, come out of the head. And I'm at a loss. I don't know what's going on, but the trash comes alive, it becomes this giant mech thing, and it comes up behind Detective Larson. He doesn't see it in his car, and that's where this ends. On probably the biggest cliffhanger of the Stitchwraith story yet, and the end of the book. I am at a bit of a loss. We know for a while there we were starting to get a lot more answers about what was going on here, right? In the first Stitchwraith story, we learned about this thing. And we learned that it was connected to some other stories, first of all, To Be Beautiful. In the second book, we started to learn some answers. Okay, it's connected to Margie, whoever that was, we didn't know at the time. It's collecting pieces of these animatronics, like the Plush Trap Chaser. And that was kind of all we knew. Third book, we learned its origin story. Fourth book, we learned who's inside of this thing, who's haunting it, and what their goal is. Fifth book, I don't remember what happened to the fifth book. Oh yeah, this is the one where the fire is first mentioned, and also where Andrew and Jake, we see them collecting everything, and we see the factory it's in. We learn more in each one, and we still get questions raised, but we've always learned something. In this book, it's basically just questions. At least we get a confirmation that the man is William, and that he's in the Stitchwraith now, and that he's the hitchhiker that was mentioned in the third story. But, I have so many questions. What is this mech thing? It seems like it's controlled by William, but, why? What's his goal now? My biggest question is, how is he, if he's in this giant mech thing, how is he going to, avoid people seeing him? I mean, for the Stitchwraith, it's okay, right? It's still relatively human-sized. It can kind of get around, sneak around, but for this giant rabbit creature thing, whatever it is, how is that thing supposed to, like, maybe it won't even try, maybe it'll just start going on a rampage through the streets. I mean, I'd be up for it, hey. Sounds cool to me. But we don't know what its goal is. Obviously, it seems to be controlled by William. I'm wondering what he's going to do now, and I'm still, the more stories of this that come out, the more I start to believe this could be connected to maybe the games. I'm not sure, maybe not all of them, but the Stitchwraith story in itself seems like it could be connected to at least one of the other stories. Maybe the books even, the original books, Silver Eyes. It's hard to say. I don't think that that's really Scott's intention, but I can't help but wonder, you know. And as for what happened to Jake and Andrew, I'm really not sure. So Jake, like, he seems to have been dragged into this thing. Andrew somehow escaped. Actually, if I remember correctly, I believe one piece of junk went flying out, right? Yeah. The endoskeleton, the Stitchwraith endoskeleton, flew out. So presumably Andrew is still in there, but Jake is trapped inside of this rabbit thing. Jake could be dead, but I don't think he is. A lot of people have been saying, okay, Jake's probably dead because he was captured by the man. I don't think so. I think he's trapped inside of this mech thing. I haven't come up with a good name for it. Maybe I should. People have started just calling it the Miscreation, I believe. Something like that. I don't know, a decent name. But I think he's trapped in there. Andrew seems to still be in the Stitchwraith because it was spewed out of the thing. So it's hard to say where we're going to go from here. But I'm really curious, and I'm really excited to find out. Either way, this is not going to be ending anytime soon. We have 5 more books in this series, at least. Probably more, because one thing I have seen people say is the first 4 books had a box set, so we could probably expect the next 4 books to also have a box set, which would end with, I believe, Gumdrop Angel, and then, you know, then we have 3 more. So we're presumably, I would think we're at least going to get 12. But then again, a little while ago, I thought, hey, we're probably going to end up getting 10. Maybe it'll end up being like 20. I don't know. It's a lot of books, and this story is still going. But I do think we're at least at the end of something. I have a lot of questions, but I think this is kind of, it feels like a bridge between the first start of the story was, it was like, Larson is trying to get the Stitchwraith is trying to get this junk. Now we don't know what anyone's goal is. We don't even know if Larson will survive, we don't know if Jake's alive, we don't know what William's goal is, and we don't know how Andrew will deal with this, since he's now the only one in the Stitchwraith. It feels like it's kind of the end of that chunk, and the beginning of another, which would make sense as a kind of halfway point, if it's like, because this is the first 6 books, that's halfway through the series, so this could be a halfway point through the Stitchwraith story. I'm not sure, it's hard to really guess, but I'm excited to see what happens next, and in like a month, we are getting the next book, so I'm excited. And I'll definitely cover it when it comes, because I'm on the edge of my seat. I can't wait. It's going to be so cool. Thank you guys for watching, and yeah, I still don't have an outro. Please give me outro ideas. I need something. Okay, bye.